Hello, everyone. Welcome to the NTI Pod Talk. My name is Dianne Kaler, and I'm the Director of Nutrition Therapy Institute. This Pod Talk is our opportunity to have fun conversations with interesting people who have interesting things to say about nutrition, food, and health. I talk to NTI instructors, students and grads, to health industry professionals, to farmers, and anyone else who has an interest in nutritional wellness. While many of our listeners come from within the NTI community as students and grads, we also have prospective students who tune in. And to those listeners in particular, I hope you find that the people we talk to inspire you to finally make the jump to pursue your passion and come to school here at NTI. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the NTI Pod Talk. My name is Dianne Kaler, and I am Director of Nutrition Therapy Institute. Today, we have a graduate / current student, and we'll talk a little bit about how that happened or why that is here in a moment. But today we have Charis Sederberg, who has an interesting background. And so I'm excited to have this conversation. So Charis, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about your background, because you are a registered nurse, you have a background in exercise science. So tell us, what is your interest in sort of the health and wellness field, and how did you come to that point, being a registered nurse and a background in exercise science?
Sure. So I went to college right after high school, and I got really interested in health through sports when I was in high school. And so I started actually as a hotel restaurant tourism major in college, and then I quickly learned that wasn't for me. So I went into exercise science and absolutely loved that. That's where I got my degree. And I worked for a big health club chain in Portland, Oregon. I grew up outside of Portland. So, but really, after a few years, I realized that kind of wasn't for me. And my grandma had cancer. And so I started taking her to the hospital and her treatments and everything, and it gave me the idea to look into going to nursing school. So I went to nursing school about 8 or 9 years after I got my exercise science degree. And I've been a nurse for 20 years now.
So, I have a couple questions for you. Number one, when you went into nursing, did anything correlate or clash with what you learned in your exercise science? Like, was there any sort of disconnect between those two?
Not really.
Okay.
I think, I used a lot of my exercise science, the science base of my degree, to get into nursing school. I ended up doing an accelerated bachelor's program, which is a 1-year, 12-month, 20 credits a semester kind of insane program, but it really was the best thing for me. I was a more mature student and I just wanted to get it done. And really, honestly, a lot of the reason that I was interested in, I would say some of the reason I was interested in nursing was it just seemed like a very stable job. I realized that I did enjoy working with people. Obviously did that with my exercise science degree, but it was in a very different way. And at that time, I thought that I wanted to be a midwife. And that was just kind of, I don't know where that came from. But
yeah,
when I got to nursing school, one of my first clinical rotations was OB. And I realized very quickly that I wanted nothing to do with having baby, delivering babies or being around babies. I love babies. I have 2 babies of my own. I mean, they're more grown now, but yeah. That was not it. But to be honest with you, my exercise science degree was very rooted in science, obviously, and it was very fun, exercising and trying out experiments and learning about how the body works is really cool. Mm-hmm. And then in nursing school, we learned even more about different things. Obviously, it was a lot more about physiology and just general normal physiology and health and how health breaks down. So those things weren't really in conflict, but it was a very different world, obviously, taking care of people as a nurse.
Yeah. Did you receive any kind of nutrition education in either of your 2 health training programs?
Yeah, so when I did my exercise science degree, we had to take some basic nutrition, and I absolutely loved it. It was very much kind of the conventional nutrition training, macros, micros, that kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Calories, weight loss is what I remember anyway. And it wasn't really that. I just thought that it was so interesting, like how nutrition could be coupled with exercise. And a lot of emphasis was based on like kind of the calorie in, calorie out model at that time. This is in the 90s. So, I just was fascinated with nutrition and I wanted to take more nutrition classes. I did end up taking a few extra ones. But that was kind of the end of the nutrition. And in nursing school, nothing. Like we didn't take anything in nutrition, anything to do with nutrition.
Yeah, that's interesting because, obviously we're going to get to it here in a moment. You kind of stepped over into the holistic nutrition realm, which is likely very different than what the nutrition paradigm that you learned, in your original sports or exercise science program. But, just when I was in college, my degree path had nothing to do with health and wellness, but I had to take electives. And one of the electives that I took was, Nutrition 101. So huge lecture hall, 200 students, Nutrition 101. And I absolutely hated it. So to hear you say that you liked it is interesting that, and likely you've had a little bit of a change in perception of what actually good nutrition means. But when I was in it, I just absolutely hated it. And I wanted nothing to do with nutrition or anything. And here I am, so for me, I had to have a really big change in my mindset to get into this holistic nutrition field. So what made you decide that you wanted to kind of convert or shall we say evolve into a more holistic nutrition paradigm?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think my nutrition interest was kind of started when I was in my exercise science degree, but I think it just kind of planted the seed and I didn't even really realize what was going to happen. But I was at the hospital with my dad was ill. He had diabetes and Parkinson's. And so I was always at all of his appointments. And I literally was driving down York Street, and that was when the Nutrition Therapy Institute was on the street, and I saw this sign. And when I got home, I Googled it, and there was like an information session. And the reason that meant anything to me at that point, this is about probably, I want to say maybe in like 2015 or so, was because my own health was suffering. And about a year prior to that, I had done a popular diet elimination program and with a friend of mine, and I realized that I didn't tolerate dairy. And it was a huge aha moment for me, not just for the present state of my health, but my health, like for my whole life of like all these things that they weren't significant, but they were things that I, dealt with. And so I was like, maybe this is kind of what I'm, meant to investigate. And so I went to the information session. And I told my husband, I said, I want to start classes at NTI. And he was like, well, what are you going to do with that? And I said, I just really think that nutrition is going to help me to heal my body. We had a child at the time who had some things going on, and I didn't know anything really back then, but now I know, and I have helped him a lot with nutrition. And so that was kind of the impetus. It was like for my own education is what I was going to do. And then as soon as I was in school, I was like, I have to help more people with this. Like, this is too good to just, you can't just keep it to yourself.
Right. So. Right. Yeah. So I just have to give an explanation here and a little bit of a disclaimer. So prior to 2019, NTI had two separate nutrition programs. One was it was a CNTP, Certified Nutrition Therapist Practitioner program, and then a Master Nutrition Therapist program. And then in 2019, we went to our state education agency and asked to combine the two programs together so that all students take the same program, all students get the same certification, same qualification, all that kind of stuff. So with that as the foundation, you started the CNTP program and were able to complete, I believe, the CNTP program around 2020. And so that, and then you came back. So you did finish that, you got that CNTP certification, and now you're back to complete the rest of what you didn't do in the previous Master Nutrition Therapist program. And now you're back doing the Nutrition Therapist Master Certification program, which is the title of our combined two programs. So I need to explain that because those of you who are listening, it may be kind of confusing. So
So I'll just add that when I started, so I'm an oncology nurse and I've always taken care of cancer patients my entire nursing career. And so when I started at NTI, part of what I was really interested in was that there was an oncology track. So really at the time when I started, there was the CNTP, the master's, and the oncology certification. And that went away very quickly. Like really, I think in my first class or two. And so, it was fine. I just continued on with my education. And then I made the choice to do my CNTP. And honestly, a lot of that choice was just based on working, having small children, and so I was kind of looking for the quicker way to get my education done.
Yes.
Now, hindsight, maybe I would have done it differently if I would have thought a little bit more about it. I don't know. But nevertheless, that's the way.
Right. And that previous CNT program, it definitely was shorter. I mean, it was fewer classes. And so that certainly is, makes sense that that's the one you would choose. But what made you want to come back and finish out now in the NTMC program, the Nutrition Therapist Master Program?
That's a great question. So there's a couple of classes in that program that I'm super interested in. I actually haven't taken yet. I'm next up to take endocrinology. And it's funny because I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So I'm not really interested in a hormone. It's not that I'm not interested in it with clients, but I'm not one to get like extra certifications or training really with hormones. But I think for my own self, I'm just kind of fascinated about, that information. And I obviously learned a lot about endocrinology in nursing school and even with my exercise science background. So it was partially that I want to get board certified. So I, as a nurse, was just, had all the certifications. I was, we had to have all different kinds of training to do what I did. With giving chemotherapy and research drugs and all those things. And so I think just in general, that's just kind of my personality of, having those accomplishments, but I really wanted to get board certified as a holistic nutrition therapy practitioner.
Right. And so I'm so glad you said that. And I will just add, previously, when we had the two separate programs, those who were CNTPs could not sit for the board exam because they didn't have all the courses to be qualified in order to do that. And by combining the two programs together so that all students take all the courses, everyone has the same certification, that allows all of our graduates to be eligible to sit for that board exam. So thank you for introducing the opportunity for me to give further explanation, but board certification, we encourage all of our graduates once they finish the program to go on and get board certified. Of course, as you know, board certification is not required in order to practice, but certainly coming from a conventional medical health field, you recognize the increase in job placement opportunities and the increase in credibility and certainly credentials. Having that extra board certification credential really adds some, oomph to your credibility and your ability to practice, and maybe at some point in time do go on to get a job in some sort of practice or field or something where you need to have that board certification. So that's awesome that that's a goal that you have. All right. So you have your own practice now. To Nourish is the name of your practice. So you're not practicing as a nurse any longer. You're strictly practicing as a nutrition therapist. Talk about your practice. What's your target audience? What kind of things do most of your clients come to you for? What's your specialty?
Sure. So I started out, I think like a lot of people, just kind of helping anyone, who was interested in what I was doing or interested in nutrition. And it really kind of organically took hold, that my practice is now very focused on digestion. So really, obviously nutrition and digestion work hand in hand. But what I've found is that if we just really focus on nutrition, but we kind of miss the pieces of digestion, so the whole digestive process, and don't assess how things are maybe functioning or not functioning, then we just are missing a big piece of the puzzle. And really, I will add in there too that stress resilience is really such a big part of it, which impacts most people's digestion. So most of my clients that come to me either for and that was really my story as well. And so people hear my story or know my story, or my clients, really a lot of my clients that come to me are through referral. So they know that that's what I do, or that's what I struggle with. But the majority of my clients have some sort of digestive complaint. So heartburn, bloating, IBS, diarrhea, constipation, both, all of those digestive things that not everybody wants to talk about. That's really what I do. And so I kind of have these 3 pillars of digestion, nutrition, and stress resilience that we work together within those pillars, with everybody from the beginning. And occasionally I will have people come to me with, mood type things, anxiety, depression, skin disorders a lot of times. And a lot of times those patients or clients also have digestive complaints, but they don't really see those as prominent. I think that's a huge thing that I see is people are like, oh, well, I just run constipated, like that's a normal thing. And it is normal for them. Like that's what's been going on for years. And so it takes a lot of education, and once they start to feel better, then they're like, oh, I had no idea that I can feel this good, right? And I don't have to be, in the kind of the old frame of the way I was living my life. So,
yeah, I think that is so common, particularly for digestive complaints, but, quite honestly, for a lot of types of dysfunction. People experience these symptoms for so long that they don't even recognize that it's a sign of dysfunction or a sign of abnormal function. Like in constipation is a really good example. I always tell my students not to ask your clients if they have normal bowel function.
Right.
Because for someone, normal could be they have a bowel movement once a week. That's what it's been like my entire life. That's normal to me, so don't use that terminology normal, because what's normal for one person may not be normal for another, quote unquote, and neither one of them may be optimal function,
right.
For the way the body system is supposed to work. So Yeah, I totally agree. And people are so willing to kind of discount constipation or diarrhea or gas and bloating that they've had for months or really more likely years. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And, as you said, digestion is kind of the foundation of everything, because if you can't properly digest your foods and absorb the nutrients that you're getting from those foods, you can do all the nutrition, changes and all you can do whatever you want and eat all these healthy foods. But if you can't digest it and absorb the nutrients, you're likely not going to get benefit from it. So
honestly, one of the biggest aha moments for me was I saw several functional medicine doctors. And so these are brilliant people that know what they're doing. And they really just wanted to address like my hormone situation or, my sleep situation. And yes, those things are very important, but no one looked at the step-by-step process of my digestion. I did that for myself. And really, I made a lot of improvement in my health from the time that I started NTI until this point where I kind of really figured out that I had to focus on digestion. And as soon as I put the focus on digestion, it was like everything came into place. So that's what I do for my clients. And honestly, like the results are just, it's not surprising to me anymore, but it's just fascinating that it's really not that hard. But a lot of people aren't doing this,
Right.
So
Right.
It's pretty awesome that we have the access to resources and all the things that we can do. And I think it's just a really, even though I didn't learn anything about nutrition in nursing school, I think all of my experience and everything I've done in my professional life has led me to where I am right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you feel like your experience, particularly in nursing, and the observations that you made about people's health experience, as you were working with them in that time period, which wasn't a lifetime, but there were relatively short time periods, probably. Now knowing more about health and wellness from a holistic perspective, can you now look back and see how some of those people's issues may have been, nutrition may have been something that could have helped them early on?
Oh, so many times. I mean, honestly, in the beginning, it almost just made me like a little bit sick, just to the point where, and I believe very much in the medical system. I think our conventional medicine and the way that doctors and providers are trained is for very specific things, is exactly what we need, like surgery, trauma, you break your leg, or even like acute illness,
Absolutely.
like that, that's fine. But for many of the chronic things that we're seeing are these kind of insidious conditions and things like that people say is not curable or it's not reversible. I mean, when I went to nursing school, they told us that type 2 diabetes was not reversible. And now people reverse type 2 all the time, So I think that it's, we can do so much for people with educating them and helping them, like you said, just restore health from a holistic perspective. And I get actually a lot of clients and really just a lot of friends who are medical people that come to me because of my background. And they want to understand it, because when I first got certified to give chemotherapy, I remember that patients would want to have like acupuncture while they were getting their chemotherapy. And it was like a huge no, like we are not doing that. And now you can see that in the infusion center, like people are getting chemo, massage, Reiki, and so we've come a long way.
Yeah.
And I think the medical community is more open to understand, but they don't understand it. It's not
That's right.
it's not the way that they learn about the body. So that's one of my favorite things to do, is to teach people, like, what does the word holistic even mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super passionate about it not being like us versus you. Like,
Yes.
to be a continuum of like, this is my training, this is what I do, this is what I believe, and we can all kind of exist in this place, right?
Mm-hmm.
To help people, because that's really is the goal. And one of the most favorite things that I've been doing lately, my husband is an anesthesiologist, so obviously a medical doctor, and I've been going in and talking to, well, I do it over Zoom, but talking to the residents when they cycle through where he works. And they want to learn about nutrition. And it's just so fun to like teach them. And they didn't learn about it in medical school at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing this kind of series of nutrition, teaching to them as part of these lectures that they get, which are usually geared more towards anesthesia. So I think they're kind of excited, not that they're going to use nutrition with a patient, because they're not
right
in the OR, but for themselves, to learn more about it and to understand health better. And I think it just helps you understand the body better when you understand, like, why are things broken down, and like, just like you mentioned before with nutrients, like, why are nutrients not getting absorbed? Like, and that the body runs on nutrients. Like, they don't even really know that, I'm like, there, if you look at the energy production system in the body, there are so many nutrients involved as coenzymes. And they're like, oh yeah, B vitamins and magnesium and all these things. It's like, that's why we need it in our food and in our diet, and to be absorbed so that it can actually be utilized in the body.
Yeah, absolutely. You said so many awesome things. First of all, I think it's amazing that you are giving nutrition education to, doctors, residents. That's amazing. Like,
I love it.
They don't get that. And that you have a connection through your husband to be able to do that is awesome. Nice job. I love it. If they want more education, let me know. I'd love to go and talk to them. We could tag team and do it together. But anyways, I think that's awesome. But the other thing that I wanted to kind of go back to about the us versus them, I am in complete agreement, and I'm pretty precise in the way I talk about holistic health and nutrition as not being alternative. A lot of people categorize the things that we talk about, even nutrition, as alternative, right? And which sets up this antagonistic us versus them, alternative versus conventional, as if there's one thing, there's another thing, and never the two shall meet, right? And so I'm very particular about wanting to discuss it as complementary, because they definitely can complement one another. And you're doing an awesome job by training doctors to make that bridge between, two things that may never be discussed in the same room with medical doctors. So I think that's awesome.
I feel so fortunate. I mean, it's kind of funny how it happened. So my husband gives a lecture on these specific days that he's like a late shift or whatever. And so he had given a bunch of lectures in a row and was like, hey, do you want to talk to them about nutrition? And I was like, do you think that they care? And he was like, yeah, I think actually if we format it in the way of like, this is your self-care kind of thing, instead of like, something else. And so they loved it. And so then that kind of started the cascade of then, a few more. And then I let them say, like, what do you want to learn? And so for the next one, we did that. We answered their questions basically. And then the next group came in and they had already heard about it. So that was so cool, and it's kind of becoming this thing where they get, can learn about nutrition. So
gosh, that is so cool. That's I love
really
that. Yeah. Nice job. Congratulations for that. So all right. Well, can
I just make one more comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to mention this earlier and I kind of forgot for a sec. So when I would take care of patients, so I spent a lot of my career in nursing in the chemo infusion center. So people would come in as an outpatient and they would get their treatment. And a lot of times during a first treatment, people are often very anxious, but even on subsequent treatments. And they would often ask, I just love taking care of people. I think that's maybe one of the one things that is harder for me when I work from home or over Zoom. It's so convenient, but I just don't see people in person, is just to sit down with someone and just kind of chat with them a little bit and just see how they're doing. And people would often ask me, what can I do during this time? And I would always tell them, and this is way before I had nutrition on my radar: drink water, sleep well, eat the best that you can, whatever that means for you. Yeah. And they were like, really? And I'm like, yes, because it's kind of twofold, right? Like those things are essential, obviously, for health, but also people, when they're getting cancer treatment, tell us that they feel out of control. Like this has happened to them and they have to just deal with it. It's a huge speed bump in their lives. And I'm like, you are putting, these things matter so much, and you are putting some control back into your lab and being able to control some things, because I've seen people who don't sleep incredibly stressed out and did not have very good outcomes. I think it makes a huge difference. Mm-hmm. So I just want to add that too, that, it is very foundational, just these, foundational things, but you have to have the foundation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And, when we talk about holistic nutrition, we're not only talking about food and, specific nutrients, B vitamins and magnesium, that we talked about earlier, but from a holistic perspective, we are talking about sleeping well and getting outside and, getting some sun exposure occasionally, and stress mitigation and all those kinds of things. So it's all very common sense stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
It is.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I think that in our day of information overload, people just kind of forget sometimes. I mean, I know I'm even like that with myself. Sometimes I'm thinking, oh, what should I do about this situation? It's my own health. And I'm like, okay, are you sleeping? Are you drinking water? Let's talk about the basics first.
Yeah. And sometimes they need someone that they view as, an authority figure or an expert, to tell them, to sort of tell them what they already probably know they need to do, but they need someone else to tell them who they believe knows more than them. So that's, so you're in a perfect position to do that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's great. So how can people find out more about you and your practice and what you do and all the things that you have upcoming and, whatever your future holds for you?
Yeah, so my website is Prime to Nourish, and my business that really, I struggled with what I was going to name my business when I named it. I'm just call it my name. Although a lot of people do that. And I really believe that we have to prime the body and give the body support. We can't always just take everything away, so I don't do a lot of weight loss, but I feel like a lot of people like to lose weight and they're always thinking about cutting calories, over exercising, all of those things. And what are we giving the body? The body needs support, especially if you have symptoms. That's the classic sign that the body needs some support. So Prime to Nourish is my business. That's the URL, and it's really easy to find me there, /contact. You can either send me an email or schedule a free discovery call. I always like to do those calls and just chat with people a little bit so that they know kind of, how I work and what I can help them with, and hear their story and just figure out how they can get started.
Great. And just to clarify, you don't see your clients in person. Everything is on Zoom, correct?
Right. So I live outside of Denver, and I do see some people in person. If people live in the metro area and they really, really want to do that, I have done that before. I have taken care of a few families and done that, where I go into people's homes. But it's just so convenient to do it on Zoom for everyone, not just for me, but for the client too. The Zoom most usually works well. So that's mostly how I see people.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was an interesting conversation. I love to hear how, your conventional training meshes with your holistic training and how you're using that. That's, I like hearing those kinds of stories. So thank you so much. And have a great rest of your day. And I know everyone will enjoy listening to this. So thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi there, and thanks for listening today. If what you heard today inspires you to want to pursue an education in holistic nutrition here at Nutrition Therapy Institute, please check us out on our website, ntischool.com, and reach out to us at admissions@ntischool.com. Our in-depth, comprehensive education is sure to provide you with the knowledge and skills you need to create the work of your dreams. Do something that feeds your passion, aligns with your values, and fuels your drive for a vital and meaningful life. It will be rewarding for yourself, your family, and anyone else with whom you interact. And with that, see you on the next episode.